Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to E20 Zone TV on this Friday edition of Have Your Say Live. To my right is Jay. Down there is the bubbling iron sensation, Sloth, aka Stephen. And we're here to talk about all things West Ham and try and cheer ourselves up because there is no transfers at the minute. Jay, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm happy to be back in my best Marco Arnautovic voice without the deception and money grabbing. Yeah, good to be back. I followed the crazy reactions to some of the non-stories in the transfer window from afar and have been itching to jump in and talk to you, James. So, yeah, it's very good to be back, mate. How are you?
All good, mate. All good. Living the dream. Sloth, what you saying?
I'm good. I'm stunned at the fact I've been called a sensation. I'm called many things, but it's not normally positive. So I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Anytime. Right, let's get into this. Jay, obviously, since you've been here, a lot of shit has happened, and not a lot of shit has happened to West Ham. What are you saying on the transfer front?
Look, it's easy to be disappointed about how things have gone so far, right? Look at what we need to do over the summer, and a complete overhaul is not an overstatement in the sense of we got holes all over our squad. We've lost four and a half players if you count Mickey. Like, we don't know what's going on, but I think we can read between the lines how that one's going to go. Let's call it 5 players that we're going to lose on a free. 2 loan signings who, granted, neither of them pulled trees up, but that's still 2 holes in the squad. So that's 7 holes we've got to fill, and other teams are doing stuff. So it's easy to look at it and start raging, which I've seen a lot of people raging already. The Josh Brownhill thing was interesting. I watched it from afar. I saw you losing your minds, James, over us being linked with Josh Brownhill. But my parting words on my final video before I took a break were simple ones, and they were: don't get distracted by any of the noise. Don't overreact to any names until you hear something reliable or until you see someone holding a shirt. Because we fell for this last time, didn't we? We got excited, we got upset, we got angry, we got happy, and we ended up with a shower of shit anyway. So, like, I see it, I hear it. It's not great to look at other clubs doing stuff and us doing nothing. I'm sure we'll get into Sullivan and his strategy for the transfer window, but I'm just trying to stay as zen as possible, mate, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm glad you're the calming influence on this channel, because without you, I'll just self-destruct, mate. I'm not going to lie. Sloth, what are you saying about the current affairs at West Ham?
Oh, well, I mean, if ever there's a man who knew about plugging holes, it's David Sullivan, isn't it? So I think
100%, mate.
I like being on shows and spaces with you, mate, because I feel like I can be a little bit naughty, and you're like headmaster who can kind of guide me back on track. But I think it's disappointing. It's not surprising, but I'm just waiting to see what happens, because I think West Ham are a funny old beast, aren't they? And it's one of those things where if I keep my expectations low, I can't be disappointed. If they go out and, they let Macaulay and Potter work together and try and identify players, then I think we'll have a decent shot. But it's just how confident I am that will happen is it's not exactly much.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm not confident at all with the current situation. To get to this, Dad's Our Job podcast. Have a beer on me. Happy weekend. Thank you very much, mate. Really do appreciate it. Goes a long way. For me, to sort of talk about this sort of topic, is that something should have been done already. Like we need quite a lot doing, and we've not done anything, and that's a bit of a concern to me. I'm not going to get too carried away. People keep telling me what the date is and to chill. But it seems like every other club can go out and sign players, and we're struggling to do so at the minute. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to sit there and be chill and enjoy the sunshine, but I'm a little bit concerned by this. I'm not going to lie. There's so much going on at West Ham, so much, and it ain't just on transfers. It's people leaving. It's the Mikel Antonio thing. It's the Paqueta thing. It's players that we're struggling to get out the door. There's the Mohammed Kudus thing at the minute, where now it's possible he could go to Manchester United. Like, Manchester United might turn their attentions to him. I don't know what you think on that, Jay, but it's like there's concerns at West Ham that need to be addressed. Instead of just keep saying, it's all going to be fine, when it's never fine at West Ham. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and do you know what? I do feel for Graham Potter a bit in this sense. Whatever you think of his play style and the tactics and however much you enjoyed or didn't enjoy his football last season, it makes me wonder how much did he know about how desperate the situation was going to be when he signed up? He's got himself a 2.5-year contract. Would he have signed up to a 2.5-year contract if he realised that all of our transfer window and our strategy and him building his squad with his players was going to depend on if we can shift some of the guys that are worth big money and on big money? I don't know how much of that he understood before he joined, because it's certainly a desperate situation where we need to improve in so many places and we're waiting for a reasonable bid to come in for Mohammed Kudus. The last thing I want is us to sell Kudus under value. What his value is I don't know, is what someone's willing to pay for him. But if we were to mug him out the door for somewhere around 40 million just to grease the wheels and just to kickstart the transfer window, that's horrible business in my mind. So
what's acceptable?
I think it depends on how the deal is structured. You look at the two clubs that are interested, right? Chelsea and Manchester United. I don't know how concrete the Manchester United interest is, or if it's people putting 2 and 2 together. For Chelsea, I think there's a lot of imaginative deals that we could potentially do. The keeper Petrovic is being mentioned a lot. A lot of people rate him. We need a goalkeeper. I think Areola's probably in the last 2 seasons that he's got at West Ham, and I wouldn't mind seeing him benched. So if we were to get 50 north of 55, 60 plus Petrovic, then I think it's a good deal. In all honesty, people thinking that we're out for 85. I don't think anyone's paying 85 for him. I don't think anyone will get anywhere near 85, to be honest. So if we can creatively construct a deal with Chelsea like that, then I'd be happy with it. If it's Manchester United, however, a team that we should be looking at and going, well, we should be scrapping with you to get back into Europe next year, then that price needs to be higher. Like, realistically, that price has to be higher because they are direct rivals for what we should.
Let me ask you something. Question to the pair of you. Would you take 50 million in Rashford?
I'm going to say no, because it breaks our wage structure. He's got a crazy attitude problem. I think he's a brilliant player, but I just don't think he fits in at West Ham personally. I think it's a crazy deal.
Is there anyone that you boys think could be who could come in from Manchester United as a part exchange?
What do you reckon, Sloth?
I don't really see a realistic player who would come in that improves us. And I know that if you'd said 5 years ago to me that you would turn down players from Manchester United, I'd be going, what on earth happened? Like, what have we become? But it's the decline of both clubs, or even the fact that we have ambitions to get into Europe, and I think the players who they have, like Kobe Mainu, they'll be looking to go to a bigger club than us and clubs in European football already. Whereas the players like Rashford, I think, while a fantastic footballer and someone who would undoubtedly come in and offer something we've not had on that left-hand side, and probably even goals up top. But I think the wages and the structure of any sort of deal for him, it could be something that doesn't backfire on the club. I think that would be a bit too harsh to say, but I think it doesn't represent good value in terms of his wages, the potential to be stuck with him if it does go a bit tits up and he doesn't perform. Then you're stuck on a contract with a player who's on big money and probably isn't going to have many offers for the sort of finances that he'd want to leave, regardless of where it's from, even if it's Saudi Arabia or something.
I actually fully agree. I just think West Ham are in a bit of a tricky situation with Mo. And I think we're in a situation where teams know we need the dough. He's the only one who's a real sellable asset at the minute, but of value. And I think teams ain't going to touch him to the end of the window. And that's where I think this is going to drag. And I think West Ham have stuck themselves in this situation. But I'm going to ask you both a question. Go back to January when it was freezing cold, lads. Like, the wind was howling from the Urals, from the east side of Norway. We put a bid in, £57 million bid in for John Duran. But now we've got no money. How does that make any sense, Jay?
We discussed it at the time at length. It was a phantom bid. It was never going to happen. The biggest nightmare that David Sullivan could have had is Aston Villa accepting that bid. He knew that they weren't going to accept that bid. He was just trying to do a thing, wasn't he? And he was trying to mess around when he thought it was an opportunity. And if they'd accepted that bid, God knows what would have happened. We'd have ended up being remember the William Carvalho deal?
Sporting Lisbon.
Sullivan got called one of the dildo brothers, and
Facts.
Sporting Lisbon. We've seen the email or the fax or whatever that got sent over there. It would have been another scandal like that where Villa then end up refusing to deal with us. And this is the big issue with us not operating with a director of football. The game's changed, lads. Like, and again, so you can park your thoughts about our previous guy, who I won't name because I can't be asked to have that discussion. But not operating with someone in that position is us handicapping ourselves. We've got a pensioner who's too busy trying to fight court cases and too busy up the nick to actually run a transfer window properly. He's not willing to put money into the club when the club desperately needs it to actually kickstart our transfer window and get us to where we need to be. And he's trying to act as director of football. How is that going to work? You'd be better off having Del Boy down the market. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not going to work, lad. So he is the biggest handicap on our transfer window because he does not know what he's doing. He just annoys people. You look at how much of a grubby little disgusting man he is. Who's going to want to deal with him? Like, that's the issue.
That is the problem. I don't know about you, Sloth, but that's the major problem, isn't it? Who's going to deal with it?
I completely agree, and it's something that I've said for a long time, and people go, oh yeah, but he spent money, and without us we wouldn't, we'd be in serious trouble if Gold and Sullivan hadn't come in. And I think, you do have to acknowledge that one fact, that we were in a serious spot of bother, and if they hadn't come in, then we could potentially cease to have existed. However, that was a long time ago. There is no excuse for the lack of progress, especially in comparison to the promises and ambitions that were made. No West Ham fan in their right mind would sit here and criticise them if we had seen continuous ambition, continuous sort of, even if it's wheeling and dealing in a certain way, that would improve the club. If we'd been developing the training grounds and all those kind of things that people like to kind of turn their nose up and say, well, that wouldn't have made a difference on the pitch. You don't know that. We can't possibly know that. But the thing is that if they were showing those signs and really pushing the agenda following the agenda that they pushed themselves, I don't think any fan would be complaining. It would be very base level stuff in the sense that it would just be about the results, because you can't fault the ambition of someone who's trying to do the right things. And when people genuinely make mistakes, then you go, you know what, that's not on you. That's just sometimes things don't work out. This is a case of a man who has continually lied to the fans and said, these are my goals, these are my ambitions, I want to do this and implement a better system and do all these things while operating in my own way, which is essentially through agents and bullying, going around and, like you mentioned, faxing clubs and saying, we've also got an offer from PSG for a player. We will go to them if you don't accept our offer. And then them turning around, calling you bluff. And then we go, oh crap, we haven't actually got a player from PSG. What are we going to do? Like, it's embarrassing. And I think that if you're going to get into this sort of level, like you mentioned with the director of football stuff, Roman Abramovich didn't go into the boardroom and start negotiating deals. These billionaire owners, they're not sat there and if they are, they have a team of people around them. When's the last time we ever heard of David Sullivan going into a boardroom and just getting something done, like paying the money? And I know that people like to go, oh, the people said just pay the money and look at what's gone wrong. That's not the point. It's about pushing a deal through, doing it professionally, and in a way that when you do when you do get that deal across the line, you don't burn bridges. You build.
It's true. And the thing is, he has burnt a lot of bridges, Sullivan. When you sort of analyze it from afar and look at it and sort of go through year after year what stuff has happened. He's burnt a lot of bridges, the man, and I am concerned, but I know what's coming. Like if we see this like this window now, I hope I'm wrong, but I'll just see us getting linked with a load of shit. I've seen us being linked with Ramsdale. Jay said about Brownhill earlier, which we're going to might mention in a minute. Like I'm not. These are not transfers that are going to get us back to where we need to be, and that's at least top 10. Like, and actually, I'm going to say this. I actually feel sorry for Potter. I really do. Right, because I feel like he's been stitched up here, and Sullivan's got his full guy in place, and we're all mugs as a fan base going, you know what? We know exactly what's going to happen. Right, we're going to blame Potter. We're going to get Potter out. Someone new will come in, and that'll be that, and then Sullivan gets away with it scot-free. So I do feel for Potter in a minute, because has he really got the tools at his disposal from this ownership? I don't believe he has. I don't believe he has. And said this. I just want to say this, Jay, quickly. And
go on.
That you land right. I said this 18 months ago that there's going to be a fire sale or acid stripping of all the talent of our club. Once we get Mo out the door, we've only got one talented player left, and that's Bowen. There is no one else. Do you know what I mean? We're running out of people to sell, and apparently we can't take loans now. I don't know how true that is or anything. Like the fight, like people are backing up. The bank's not offering us loans and things like that. It's a bad situation. And if we don't get this right, this window, honestly, mate, if we finish 17th this year, I'll be over the fucking moon at present. I really will. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, it's in a bad way. First out, very quickly. Shout out Colin. Good to see Colin in the chat. We're in debt. You can see the power struggle already between Potter and McCauley versus David Sullivan, right? Because there's an interesting conversation going on in chat. I think Ricky, I can't see who said it, but they were talking about Barry Silkman clients, Will Salthouse clients. Is Brownhill a Salthouse client? I think he probably is.
I think he is.
Yeah. So you can see the power struggle already, and you can see why it turned out the way it did. So Sullivan, as you have pointed out a few times, James, has been after this player for a while, knowing that he'd be cheap, he'd be homegrown, he'd fit the bill for Sullivan, his wages won't be very high, and he's been after him for a long time. He knows the guy's agent. It makes sense he's coming to the end of his contract. We need bodies. So it made sense that it was just gradually getting to a stage where it seemed like we were going to sign him. Potter and McCauley said a long time ago that they want to go for a data-driven approach. They don't want to go for these agent deals. So you can see Sullivan default into type and trying to do what he normally does in the way that he operates. And Potter and McCauley saying, mate, that's not happening. We've actually got better players already at the club, which says a lot about what they think of Brownhill, by the way, if they think Andy Irving and Guido Rodriguez are better than Josh Brownhill. So, like, it reeks to me already that this is exactly how the transfer window is going to go. Sullivan's going to try and put his grubby little mitts over it, but we need to let Carl McCauley do whatever he's going to do, because data-driven approaches are how Brighton approach their transfer windows, which is why Brighton are financially the best run club in the country. So we have to let McCauley do what he's going to do, but I don't think Sullivan's going to be able to, because he's a control freak.
What do you make of this link? I asked you, Sloth, first, of Brownhill.
Look, I think he is a solid player. That's the thing. I wouldn't be angry if we signed him. Personally, I think if we are looking at, say, moving on James Ward-Prowse, Andy Irving, Guido Rodriguez, we can easily cover the sort of signing on fees, the wages. You said he's on not a lot of money. I've been told he's on about 60 grand a week at Burnley. So you're still going to have to increase that. You can probably say that's been, that'll be covered by the loss of players like Cresswell or even one Danny Ings. However, I think that when you look at what he adds to the team and build a squad, does he push us forward in any way other than, say, maybe he has a freak season like James Ward-Prowse had? If he even hits half the sort of level that he's hitting the Championship this season, we'll all be sat here going, what a signing. That's been a fantastic bit of business on a free. However, I can't see him doing that. And I don't want to sound overly cynical here. I quite often am. But I just think that for me, there needs to be a major change at the football club in sort of who we sign and why we sign them, like you said, with a data-driven approach. And we're quite lucky that there are some good clients on Will Salthouse's book at the moment. You know, it's a case of there are players on there who would progress us forward and increase the quality in the starting 11, not just the squad. But when I look at someone like Josh Brownhill, and I think that's the sort of player that you sign to kind of
stabilize yourself, really, in the Premier League.
Yeah, stabilize yourself, and you can rely on him to put in the shift. If you're in an FA Cup run and you're away at Barnsley and it's, you know, pissing down with rain, you can rely on Josh Brownhill to put in a shift. He'll give you a 7 out of 10 performance. But is he going to be able to step it up if you're playing against Bayer Leverkusen next season? Like my head says no. My heart would be, you know, I'd be more than happy to. But these are the sort of things that I look at, and I just question the approach overall. And you kind of hinted at asset stripping and that element of things. Personally, I think there's so much money in the top leagues at the moment. This idea that David Sullivan is selling to asset strip and doesn't care if we get relegated. To be honest, I think that's nonsense. He will know that if we get relegated, that is hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds off our value. And he already values us astronomically. So,
but the only thing I will say to that, Sloth, just to come in there, is that he don't care as long as we're in the league. That's it. Like I was Sullivan, I don't think he cares, mate. Because someone said this to me the other day. Now, I'm going to take it on face value on what they said to me. He hasn't invested no money since 2014. So there is the time to invest, surely. Like the team is like slowly falling apart, right? We've got to sell players before we buy players. Even that might not be enough. And we've got an owner in charge who's always doing his take. Now, listen, if Sullivan was putting money in, I'd be a bit more lenient towards him to a point. But he just doesn't. He doesn't. He does this to himself. And the problem is that he's getting too much involved in what Potter really wants. Now, Carl McCauley has got a list of 10 targets, and you got Sullivan with a list of 10 targets. We all know what targets they're going to lean towards because Sullivan's always going to have the agent on his side because he's always going to earn a pound note out of it. So I'm a bit worried on that regard. And the thing is, saying what you said just a minute ago, Jay, I make you 100% right. The conflict hasn't happened yet in this between them. It hasn't started yet. There's going to come a transfer, and I've said it to people for ages towards the back end of the window, and that's why I was worried. That's why I was fucking shit scared, to be truthfully honest, is that there hasn't been a moment yet in this window where they've not they're going to disagree on a target. Now, if that's on your dicker, it might be him. But even that, the longer we leave it with him, if AC Milan come in and take him off our hands, there's another player gone. What are you saying, Jay?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I completely agree with you. You look at the shower of shit that I would call our transfer window this time last year. There was 3 entities there when you had Lopetegui, you had He Who Shall Not Be Named, and you had Sullivan. And all of them had their own different ideas, and all of them were trying to pull in a different direction. And we ended up with that transfer window that was split in 3. And you can see distinctly the 3 different groups of players and where they came from. And that's why the squad just didn't gel and it didn't work because there was no character about it. There was no personality and there was no set style. There were just different players trying to do different things. Now, we've got rid of one of those entities, but it still means we're going to have Potter and McCauley trying to do one thing, Sullivan trying to do another thing, and it still isn't going to work. When you talk about this Onyedika guy, because I agree, we're looking at a player there that looks like he fits the mold for what we need. Looks like he's a pretty sensible price for a player of that profile, but we just don't have the money. And so I'm personally still going to try and have the mantra, like whatever happens this month, we're still in June. Until we get this time into July, we're probably going to watch a lot of players sign for a lot of different clubs where we go, Jesus Christ, he could have done a job for us. You look at Kelleher, for example. We talked about Kelleher on and I was keen to talk about this because we talked about him a lot. Me and Lucas have talked about him loads. And we talked on this channel probably before Christmas. And I said about how much I'd want Kelleher, and Lucas was like, he's a 40 mil player. Like Liverpool are going to want 40 mil for him, and it's unreasonable. How that geezer went for 12.5 mil plus add-ons is beyond me. Brentford knew they had a problem. Brentford knew they were losing a goalkeeper, and they went out and they got a top quality goalkeeper. Granted, he's not the finished article. He's got his flaws, but they've gone and got a player for the future who will be there for the next 5 to 10 years.
Ready-made number one.
Comes in. Yep, there you go. And that's a problem solved immediately. We, however, knew that we were losing Lucas Fabianski at the end of the season, knew that we needed to go out and get someone who's better than Alphonse Areola because he doesn't fit the system. He hasn't fitted the system under Lopetegui. He doesn't fit the system under Potter. Lo and behold, if you change Potter, he's probably not going to fit that system either. And we're just sitting there and we're watching goalkeepers go elsewhere. And if we end up with Ramsdale on loan, which is a deal I can see happening because it makes a lot of sense that we don't have to pay out a transfer fee because we can't afford to, that's the kind of deals that we're going to get served up. And the fact that we haven't got an owner who's willing to invest means we have to just sit tight and wait for more funds to come in.
Is this a worry, though, for you guys? Because obviously, as I just said previous, Mo is the asset. Mo is the one where he's going to generate the most money. But clubs are not stupid. They're going to wait. They know West Ham want that, so they're going to wait unless, for argument's sake, Petridge at Chelsea becomes available. Like we go in there with Mo, they give us X amount plus him, and Dewsbury Hall. I've seen Dewsbury Hall mention something like, which I'm not opposed to it. I see your post earlier on, Sloth, where you was like, you don't know about Dewsbury Hall. So like it's the waiting game for us, but it's a dangerous waiting game if we keep like waiting here, and then we're not getting no one. Do you know what I mean? Because you know what's going to happen, right? And I'm going to say this: we wait. And then we keep losing target after target and target. And then before we know where we are, we're scrambling for people because all the good players are gone. So, you know, Sloth, what are you saying on that, mate?
No, I completely agree. And I've said this is the problem with kind of selling to buy all the time is that if you're going to rely on a sale, it takes time to go through. And you are going to naturally miss out on targets who could have been a better fit for you. To me, that's just poor business in general. You know, you should be buying the players who suit you the best, but also trying to get good value for them. And say at the moment we know we like Diarra from Strasbourg. He's been with Leeds, and they're looking at about 25 million euros. It is the rumor. If that deal does happen, then that's the kind of thing that you need to actually go, he was our number one target in that area. We're going to match that offer, and this is the case where sell to buy goes out the window. You need to have a list of players you're willing to do that for. And also, it's people might roll their eyes, but you almost need like a secondary budget. You need an emergency budget just in case you can't sell those players. Because any business, if you have an asset, if you can't get what you want for it, then you don't sell it. You keep a hold of it. If you're not going to go under, then you keep it for as long as you can until it's worth that value again. So with someone like Kudus, you know, his attitude this season's been poor, but if he has another season like he did in his first season while with us, suddenly his value's up there again, and we're all going, okay, well that's an 80 million pound player for the window. And it's a case of you can pout this line of sell to buy, but at the end of the day, you've got to do what's best for the club. And if that means you spend a little bit less on transfers, but you get players that you actually want, and Macaulay and Potter can find you those data-driven targets who might cost a little bit less, then you move for them. And let's not forget, we've got Edson Alvarez and Naya Faguerd, who could potentially be worth about 60 million, right? Like being sold together, you know, 60 million pounds brought in. We can plan with that budget. So we can plan and do that, but we cannot sit back and be static. And I think at the moment, there's plenty of players out there. You know, there's so much quality out there at the moment. We just have to be willing to move for it if someone makes a bid, and match anything that is made. You know, you mentioned Reinders going to Man City, and you know, we've got a number of targets that match with AC Milan, like Onyedika. So suddenly you look at that domino and you go, well, that could potentially take Onyedika from us. If he is Potter's main man, you go out and sign him. you say, right, we're going to back you. This is what we're going to do. And I'm afraid that means we might, step in and say, I'm sorry, I know you wanted to see Nair for Guerd in pre-season, but we're going to sell him. That's that. And if Potter goes, yeah, okay, then make it happen. But don't sit back and use this sort of excuse of, oh, I've got no money. Like I sound, it's millions of pounds, and I realise I sound like an absolute dafty. But going, oh, I can't do that. We've got to sell to buy. There's too much money in the modern game for any football fan to believe that.
Can I ask both of you a question? I put it to the chat and all. Yeah, are we being concerned over nothing in regards to the midfield area? Because there is players that are going to be coming into the fold this year. Freddie Potts being one. You got Earthy in there. You got Orford in there. Is it a case of that we might have already made replacements for your Guido, for your Carlos Soler in them boys, and it ain't as bad as what it is, and basically all we really need is about 6 players. Like, and I know 6 players sounds a lot. It still sounds a lot. But when you go for the striker situation, and we'll get onto Mikel Antonio and all, like, what's going on with that? Because that's quite embarrassing the way that's handled. Are we worrying about nothing, Jay, really? Or should we be concerned?
I don't know about worrying about nothing. And you raise a really valid point there, right? So, and that's a great comparison, yeah? So I would actually say Carlos Soler and George Earthy are probably kind of similar players in terms of like the role that they play and the kind of qualities that they bring.
Sort of, yeah.
Kind of similar. I don't say like the same kind, but kind of similar. Same words, different order. I would say they're kind of similar. I would say Potts is obviously going to come in and play in a deep line midfield role, which we're crying out for. And you're comparing with Guido Rodriguez. In the future, and what they represent to the club, I would say they're incredibly valuable players. But are they better players to come in and benefit the team right now? So, and the question I would ask then, or the way that I would put this, is if you were to say, okay, well, we'll replace Soler with George Earthy, we'll let Guido go for a couple of million, because that's probably all you could get for him, and replace him with Freddie Potts, I'd say fair enough. And I'd love watching those 2 players play for West Ham next season and see what they could do. But is that going to take you from a 14th place finish to the top half? Is that the kind of ambition we need to be showing? I want to see these players have a route to the first team. But is that going to get you what you want, James? Because you've said you want a top half finish next season. Are those 2 players the answer?
Right. I understand what you're saying. My issue is that what do you do with Freddie then? Because if you don't use him now, it's like you're never going to use the geezer, and then you might as well just sell him. Yeah, and I don't want to. Like, do I think Freddie Potts can break into West Ham's midfield? I think so now. Like, if he can't get in it now, and the midfield is absolutely fucking atrocious, then he's never going to get in there, right? I think Earthy and Orford, you can give them sort of benefit of the doubt because they're a bit younger. Earthy might need another loan, and Orford definitely needs to be playing some sort of football next year. Do you know what I'm saying? So what do I want? I want to see West Ham top 10, but I'm more fearful than anything, mate. Until I think we all are. Like, I think we all are deep down. Like, anyone out there who's not worried is lying, because when you look at like the players that we're being linked with, and you're looking at what we've actually done so far, we haven't done quite a lot. We haven't really sold anyone, and we've got a lot of players on the bill basically that we can't really shift. So it's a cause for concern. It all depends around this sort of question up from you before I hand it over to Sloth. Is basically, what is it that you perceive as a good season next year? Now, if West Ham finish 12th next year, is that a good season with stabilising the situation, finishing about 12th and then going again the following year? I don't know. I don't know, mate. Like, for me, top 10 is always where we should be looking at. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. But I think Freddie Potts has to be included in the pre-season at Austria, go to America, and then you're going to have to see how good he really is and put him in game after game and really analyse him. I think Freddie's ready. I think he looks ready now. He's someone who understands the club. He's a fan. It goes a long way. I know people don't believe that shit, but it does. Like, it goes a long way. You understand what the fan base needs. We need characters, and we need someone who feels the club in there. Jared can't do it on his own. He can't do it on his own. So, Sloth, what you saying on that, mate?
I think that they definitely deserve their chance. And when you talk about, Carlos Soler and Guido Rodriguez going, I think that Carlos Soler showed glimpses of what he can do, but you're not really talking about players who did anything for West Ham. They didn't improve us, and I would say that losing them is going to have zero impact on our expectations for next season. Potts and Erty coming in, well, it makes me a little bit more excited, and I agree with what Paul's saying. We've got to aim for those European spots, and I think that's what I consider a great season. Getting back in Europe, I would be happy with a top half finish like yourself, but I think when you look at how I want the football club to be run, a lot of people kind of think I just want transfers. They think I just want, some bloke from the Brazilian third division who's 6'9" or whatever to come in. It's not true. I do want academy players to come in and really improve the first team. But there is a reality that I think so many people forget in football, is that you're looking at maybe 0.01% of players in the entire game who will come through and actually improve the first 11 of your football club. Not just the football club at the top level, at any football club. That to improve your side is incredibly difficult. To do it for your own academy is just as hard. And I think I would love to see them given the chance. I think that at the moment there's no risk in it. You've got to give them the chance to go and play football, because realistically they're not going to make us worse than we already are. But we need to come in who can take us forward as well. So give these young players the chance, but do it with bringing in the likes of Diarra or Onyedika as well. And you have to kind of caveat that with a notion that we also have to be willing to take their mistakes. Declan Rice made mistakes when he was coming through. We can't just suddenly, if George Earthy misses an absolute sitter that would have won us a game against Chelsea, we can't just all suddenly start throwing him under the bus. And that's something that, I think we saw with Scarles at points in the season, particularly away at Anfield, when he got absolutely torn to shreds online just because he had a bad game against arguably the best player in the league. And I think if we do that, then that's when you hurt players. That's when you hurt their chances of improving and actually becoming West Ham players.
Before I hand it over to Jay, I do agree with you that you have to look at the standard that you're trying to keep for next season. I completely agree. Like, you can't bring these players in because they're just youth players and we're just going to see how they go. They're going to have to be good enough. I think Freddie is good enough. I think Freddie's done his time. I think he's a player that he's no worse than fucking Guido or Andy Irving or any of these other players. Do you know what I'm saying? So, I'd give him the opportunity straight away. The other ones, it's a bit of a different story with me. But listen, if we ain't got no money, we might have to be forced. Like, the hand might be forced. That's the thing. And people need to understand that we might have to chuck these lads in and have a go and see what they land. And you know what? We've done it before in the past, and it's worked out wonders. I remember years ago with Ben Johnson and Gakia. I remember him when he come in and he had a good spell with West Ham before he left to go to Watford. There's been times where we've chucked players in and they've actually performed, and we might need some energy and hunger in there. Do you know what I mean? Because one thing this club lacks at the minute, it just lacks spirit. Just lacks anything about it. Do you know what I'm saying? Jay, what you saying, mate?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. My only concern, and before I get onto that, like, it is whatever we get served up is whatever we get served up, because we've got no idea realistically, like, how this is going to unfold. Are we actually going to be able to sell the assets that we need to sell to then grease the wheels and start signing the players that we need to sign? Because if you end up going in with largely the same squad as we had last season, which we've been told to expect that in pre-season, then we are in for a really miserable season. And supplementing it with youth, well, what happens, and this is my big concern, when they have a couple of bad games and the Wilderness Dog starts telling us that they're not ready for first team football. We should have sent them out on loan. And these poor kids get absolutely fed to the wolves. Because it started to happen with Ollie Scholes. Ollie Scholes had he didn't even have a couple of bad performances. He had one bad performance at Liverpool and everyone was saying that he's not ready.
There was two. There was
two bad performances for a 19-year-old, and people were saying he's not ready and he needs to be loaned out next season. You then put two players in important areas of the squad that we need to improve, who have had their loan on in the championship, who we're going to have to give them time to, as Sloth says, we're going to have to give them time to make those mistakes. We're going to have to give them time to get used to the Premier League. What happens then when they have a couple of bad games and the fan base starts turning on them and we haven't got alternatives? That's what I'm concerned about. Then the atmosphere around the club becomes more toxic than it already is. And those players who are meant to come in and boost the affinity between the fans and the first team actually do the opposite. That's the big concern that I've got, James.
Yeah, but would you say that how would you assess Scholes? Because I thought Scholes was okay. I thought for coming in when he did, he had a pretty decent-ish season, not amazing. Had a couple of unreal performances. The Arsenal game springs to mind when he locked up their winger. So he's going to have bad games, and I did say that. Like there was two games back to back. There was Bournemouth at home in a 2-2 draw, where he got hooked at half time, I think it was, and the other one was Liverpool when he got absolutely destroyed by Salah. Which do I blame him or do I blame fucking Potter for putting him in that situation? Like it's 50-50 on that one. So it is what it is. Let's talk about Mikel Antonio before we come towards the end. Jay, what do you make of what's going on with that?
You know how much I love Mikel Antonio. I absolutely love the bloke. And I would love to see one last dance. I'd love to see him come out in a West Ham shirt at least one more time. What I found really interesting was the rumour that he was fit for the last game of the season. I don't know if anyone in chat or anything has heard this rumour. Yeah, but apparently he was fit to be on the bench for the last game of the season. Now, why wasn't he put on that bench? I don't know. There's one of a number of reasons. Potter might just not have been risking him. Like, what's the point? We didn't need him. We had nothing to play for. We were away to Ipswich. You had more chance of doing him more harm than good by putting him on the pitch, which means he was probably trying to protect him because he wanted to see whether he could be part of the squad next season. Can he be part of this squad this coming season? Well, let's look at the facts, right? Mikel Antonio is on 100+ grand a week at West Ham United. He just had a career-changing injury, potentially life-ending injury, and he's just come back from major surgery at the age of 35. Is he worth 100+ grand a week? No, he's definitely not. Is he worth more than the 20 grand a week we've probably offered him, or apparently offered him? Yeah, he probably is. But at the same time, when you're in the situation that we're in, it's really delicate. And I think it's lose-lose, to be honest. If you end up paying him the money that he wants, people are going to turn around and say, as somebody, Matthews said in chat, no room for sentiment. Yeah, I understand that. I'm a sentimental guy when it comes to Mikel Antonio. Over a decade of service to our club, Premier League record goal scorer. He's been there through thick and thin. He's been through everything in his personal life. He's lifted a trophy with West Ham. He is the rags to riches story coming through at Tooting and Mitcham and ended up playing in the Premier League and becoming an icon at West Ham. So there is a bit of sentiment in it for me. I'm happy with the fact that we've not said, all right, off you pop, we'll see you later. And that we're actually trying to sort something out. I think there's an element of us probably trying to call his bluff a little bit. The talk is that
I believe that.
The talk is that he reckons he's got offers on the table, potential offers from Premier League clubs that are going to pay more, and we're probably going, all right, then go and have a look at them.
Yeah,
and because for his career, if he can get a brilliant first team wage playing Premier League football again, mate, I'll be gutted to see him play against West Ham, but I'll say good luck to the bloke. He deserves to carry on playing football. But if he can't get that and he comes back tail between his legs and says, actually, lads, yeah, I do want a contract with you guys, then the club have probably done the right thing. Does it feel a bit dirty? Yeah, it does. But at the same time, we ain't got any money, lads. So we have to reduce that wage bill. So
it is true. It is true what you're saying, right? Is his sort of status at West Ham going to be tarnished by this, though? Because the money situation, if he's looking at the money and he's not thinking of the club, and where do you go with that? That's a real concern. Do you know what I'm saying? I understand what people say about there's no sentiment at the club. I sort of get that. And if Mickey didn't have this sort of car crash, we would have all probably been in agreement and said, yeah, he has to go. But currently, right now, I don't see a top end striker coming in at his club. I really don't. And I look at him and I think, well, if you give him a new deal, that saves that problem. Right, I'm not saying that he should be first choice. Right, let's not take that out of context. I think he's a good backup to have off the bench for 20 minutes or 15 minutes, and I think he could do a job. Like, and he'd be no different to having Danny Ings there. Do you know what I mean? But these, like with Mickey, you know what you're going to get with him for the last 15, 20 minutes of a game. So, you know, that's where I look at it. Sloth, what you saying on that, mate?
I think it's a really difficult one because I don't want to sound really cold, but I don't think people realise the severity of the injury that he had, but particularly in terms of top level football. You know, the bones that he broke in his leg are like concrete, and apparently fractured 4 different places. Now, for anyone, that is a big injury to rehab and recover from. For a professional footballer to then go into a contact game on a very hard surface, you know, even the training facilities that we have, they're not going to be rock hard like the pitches we play on week in, week out. You then factor in the challenges he's going to face from a defender on that leg, week in, week out. I think it's a massive ask. And look, I love the romance of football. I think that if it was down to me, I wouldn't give him a contract. I wouldn't even offer him a contract. Like, I think we've done the right thing by saying we're going to offer you a lower term contract. If you've taken that, then, you know, fantastic. You've got someone around the club who has clearly got the right attitude and is determined to regain that form and prove himself, which is massively admirable. However, this is a guy who's also been paid very handsomely by the club. It's not like this isn't a monetary comparison for 99% of people. He's been earning tens of thousands of pounds a week. And I'm not saying in any way that changes how I feel about the situation from a personal point of view. But I think that when you look at the cold, hard facts, we need a striker. He, regardless of what people say, last season, he was not good.
Yeah.
And he has not made an impact for us at the top level.
Yeah, but I'm going to say this. I don't think anyone would say about him starting games West Ham like he was. I think everyone would be in agreement. If he was to sign, he'd be your backup option, your second, maybe even your third choice. Like, there's something that come into my mind when you were discussing that just a minute ago about Evan Ferguson. Is that also another reason why Sullivan is being a bit iffy with Potter? Because of the transfer of Evan Ferguson? Because that was a fucking bad transfer, let's be honest. And
just on that, what was it a bad transfer? We didn't have any money to spend. We needed cover. He came in case of an emergency. A guy who needed game time, who needed to find form, needed to find fitness. We needed a body who can play up front. He didn't score any goals. He didn't really do anything. We didn't have any emergencies. Like, luckily, we didn't need to rely on him because he wasn't good enough. I don't think it was a bad transfer. And if Sullivan's going to turn around and say, "How dare you sign this guy on loan for 25 grand a week with no strings attached?" I don't see how that can be construed as a bad transfer. Personally, it didn't work. So what? We loaned him. He'll go to the Championship probably, and Brighton are trying to get rid of him. Like, that's how much he's fallen from where he first was. So I don't think that could be the case personally.
Yeah, it wasn't Calvin Phillips level bad where we paid millions of pounds for him and he directly and negatively impacted.
You tell that to Sullivan, lads. Right, before we come towards the end, Jay, anything else you want to discuss? Like, anything that we've missed? Do you know what I'm saying? Obviously Ramsdale. I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, I think something that I've talked about a lot is the key. It may seem unexciting, but a key signing for me is Kyle Walker-Peters. He is actually an attainable player in a position that we need to get on a free. Like, if we don't sign anybody on a free transfer, we are really, really we're up shit creek properly. You think Vladimir Sufal providing cover at right back was doing a great job for not a lot of money because he only played a handful of games, came on occasionally, and he was reliable, if unexciting. Kyle Walker-Peters is an important transfer target for us. And if we don't get Kyle Walker-Peters and someone like Fulham or Everton gets him, then it tells you exactly where we are in terms of like how we are as a club and what pool we've got. What's that?
Part ways. Emerson, Palmieri, and West Ham are planning to part ways this summer. Okay.
There you go.
Told you.
Yeah. Breaking news.
Shout out to Wappy Fat there, who just brought it in on the chat. So thank you very much, mate. I just had a look. And I did say it. I said it. I said Emerson won't be in next season.
Sorry, what did you call him, James? Wappy Fat?
Wappy Fat, or whatever it is. Fuck knows. Wetty Fat, yeah. Watty Fat, mate. I'm not even drunk. I'm not even drunk yet. So that's God. Later. That's later spillage. Let's get your quick thoughts on that. Emerson saying goodbye by the looks of it.
I think it's coming, wouldn't it? I think this. I know that X has kind of alluded to this, and he obviously Emerson put out his cryptic messages, which I'm not a fan of. I think it's very silly to do that and needless, really. But I think you've got to look at it and say, thank you. And as you rightly said, Kyle Walker-Peters is someone that we can get in for free, and then if we make any money off a sale for Emerson, then we put that towards an upgrade somewhere else on the pitch.
Yeah, I think there's two signings. Shout out to Dad's podcast. Yeah. I see him put a list up of all the free transfer, and there's one transfer on there, free transfer, that for me, I looked at it and I thought, wonder where he's going. And that's Tyreek Mitchell. Yeah. Crystal Palace, free transfer this summer. So if Kyle Walker-Peters can't get done, go and get him. Right. He could link up on that side. I think that's a very good signing for someone.
I'll just say on that, I've never been impressed by his attacking output. I think he's a very good defender. I think he's very, very good. But going forward, if you're playing three at the back and you need him at wing back, I don't know if he's the answer, mate. Granted, free signing, yeah, great, squad player, no problem at all. But I've never been impressed by his attacking output personally.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Before we round this video up, gentlemen, I want you to give us your free signings. I put it out on Twitter the other day, and I'm going to be honest. The amount of comments I got is, it's the 13th or the 12th of June. Calm down. Shut the fuck up. How about that? Do you know what I mean? I'm going to ask the question to the people. Do you know what I'm saying? And Ben, I will be doing a Ascot watch along next week, son. Can't wait. So Sloth, give us your top three. What you think?
Are we talking dream or are we talking realistic?
We're talking realistic because we ain't got time for fucking dreams.
They fade and die. Right, I'm going to go realistic then. I think Stassin would be on that. I think we need him as an option up top, and with St. Etienne's relegation, I think that's a fairly realistic one we could get done at a decent price. Yeah. I'm going to go Amir Richardson next. I saw we've been linked with him today. I'm a massive fan. I've been watching him since he was at Stade Rem and he was alongside Ekitike. Both those players, I think, were the standouts in that side. He's gone to Fiorentina. He's 6'6", and I think he kind of combines the best of Souček, but gives us something that we lack in the fact that he can actually, progress the ball by himself. He's a good dribbler and technically very strong. So that's my two. And I do think there's some legs in Petrovic. I think we'll potentially be willing to listen to a reduced fee for Kudus and Petrovic. So they would be my three.
Fair enough, Sloth. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, I like all of those. I would say, obviously, Kyle Walker-Peters we've talked about. Emmanuel Omega. I quite like the idea of Emmanuel Omega. I think he'd be a good signing. James McAtee. I really like the idea of James McAtee. I think
watched
he'd be
him
available.
Last night, decent.
Yeah, I think he'd be available for a reasonable price, homegrown, right kind of profile, creativity, energy, does everything we need him to do. I don't know why we've not gone in for him already. So yeah, hopefully that's up our sleeve and hopefully we go for him at some point.
There was a couple of players on the under 21 game that I watched last night. Obviously, Hayden Hackney come on. He's a player that
your boy.
I rate him, mate. I really do. I think he's a bit wasted at Borough. I think he's one. Obviously, McAtee was there. There's another player there who come on, plays for Liverpool, youngster, and we was linked with him before. I can't name evades me a little bit, but he come on last night and played in midfield in Tyler something. I can't remember his fucking name, but he'll be a good player. But do you know what? I think we need to make sure that we get the spine of the side right. So start with the goalkeeper, go through to the centre halves, and then work our way to the midfield and up front. That's the guy. Thank you, Will. Tyler Morton. He basically, I think Liverpool are looking to try and cash in on certain players, and I think he'd be one of them. If he's one of them, then we might have to see a Brighton regen at West Ham. Do you know what I mean? And see what happens. But Sloth, thank you very much for coming on, mate. I really do appreciate it.
More than welcome. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
No worries at all, mate. Listen, go over and subscribe to Babbling Irons YouTube channel. Goes a long way. It really helps him out. I had a look earlier on. He's over 3,000 subscribers. Let's get him to 4,000. So yeah, go over and subscribe to Sloth and Frank and all the boys over there. Jay, thank you very much for coming on, mate. Any final words from you, Jay?
Keep your eyes out, members. We have got an exciting announcement coming to the members very soon. If you're not a member, what are you doing? Sign up to your E20 membership ASAP for an exciting announcement over the next few days. That is it from me.
Yeah. Special like on the video. Subscribe to E20 Zone TV. Hit notification bell. Thank you very much for watching. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to go out now and enjoy life for once. You know what I'm saying? Because West Ham don't give us any enjoyment at the minute. But all I'm going to say is this before we go. We're just going to have to sort of wait and suffer this for a little while longer. I'm not going to be panicking now, but give it a month's time. If we're sitting here on the 13th of July and nothing's happened, then I am going to be a little bit concerned. Do you know what I mean?
I'll hold you to that, James. Not going to be panicking now. I guarantee you are blowing up the WhatsApp group in the next week when we get linked with someone crazy and you start panicking. I will remind you of this conversation. Don't you worry.
If you want to join the E20 WhatsApp group, you're more than welcome. Anyway, from me to you, take care of yourselves out there. Be safe, be well, be claret and blue, and be chilled like Jay. Peace.